it is hoodie season. The time of the year when the weather starts changing, it starts cooling off, the leaves are changing, getting that beautiful color that makes pretty much everyone look good, and you can get those really, really delicious fall-tastic photos. What? Oh, my hoodie?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's hysterical. I love this thing. It's great. Actually, I made it. It's on my website, available if you want to get one. They're black, green, and kind of a salmonish red color, if that floats your boat. But there's only a limited supply, so I'll link it in the description if you want to get one. But anyways, I love this season. It is the best time of the year. But you're not here for that. You're here for tips for a beginner. Let's get started. Will Simpson here, and welcome to Exploring Photography. Today we're going over the 5 most commonly asked questions that a beginner photographer asks, and we're answering them. I posted in my photography group what the most common questions are for beginners, and these are the ones that came up, and I added a few of my own that I found are actually super popular. I'll also link my photography group in the description. That way, if you're interested in joining, just click the link and it's on Facebook. The first question we're gonna go over is the most commonly asked question every single beginner asks. And I bet you can guess. That's right. What camera should I start with, or should I get? Now, without going into this too much, there is a very simple method on how to pick a camera, because when you're a beginner, you don't need anything fancy, you don't need anything expensive, you need something that takes photos. And if that's your phone, that's great. But if you want more like a DSLR or mirrorless camera, here are the questions you need to ask yourself. First, do I have a brand preference? Canon, Sony, Fuji, whatever. Second, what's my budget? If you can answer these 2 questions, let's say you don't have a brand preference, or your brand preference is Canon and your budget is $1,500. Search online, Canon cameras for $1,500. Find something that works in those parameters and get it, because realistically, it will work for you. You will be able to shoot with it, you will be able to learn with it, and eventually you will upgrade. But the thing is, just get a camera. And the other thing I recommend is go to a camera store. If you don't have one near you, go to like a Best Buy or something like that and pick up cameras. Feel them, touch them, take a few photos, play with the menus, get the feel of it. Because if you don't like the feel of the camera, it doesn't matter how expensive or cheap it is, you're most likely not gonna use it that much. If you don't have attention on the feel of the camera and you like the way it works and you're comfortable using it, you're more likely going to use it more often. So that is the easiest way to pick a camera. Now, you could continue doing what everyone does and asking people, what camera should I buy? But that's not really going to tell you anything, because they're going to tell you the gamut of cameras. Nikon users will tell you Nikon, Sony users will tell you Sony, Canon users, me, will tell you Canon, Fuji users, and you see where this is going. The thing is, find something in your budget, find your brand preference, buy a camera, start using it. Simple as that. I have a more in-depth video on this as well. I'll link it in the description. It goes over a little bit more involved and has a ton of suggestions in the description of the video. So I'll link that in the description. Let's go on to the second most common question, and that is, how do I get a blurry background? Now, this seems like a very simple question. It seems like a very easy thing, but the thing is, we all start at the same place. We all start from knowing nothing. And it's actually very, very simple. It has to do with your f-stop. The lower your f-stop is, the blurrier your background will be. Now, it gets a little bit more involved in this. It also has to do with the distance between your subject and the background. For example, if you take a picture of your subject at f2.8 and you take a picture of your subject at f16, you're gonna have a blurrier background at f2.8 than you will at f16. And that just comes with learning your f-stop setting. And I did a video about this, really involved, and I'll link that one in the description as well. But just as a note, another thing that comes into play is lens compression. What that means is when you shoot a picture at 15 or 16 millimeters, you get very wide and it will blur the background. But taking the exact same picture at 200 millimeters will pull the background up, the farther away background, and what it'll do is it'll really create a lot of blur. Now, this is a little bit more involved. I don't want to get into much about this, but I just wanted to make note of that. There's a couple of lens videos that I did. Again, I will link those in the description. If you haven't noticed, I have videos on a lot of this stuff, so there are more involved videos on all of these questions, and I recommend you go check them out after this video. Okay, number 3, and this is, how do I get sharp focus? Unfortunately, a lot of this comes down to practice. Cameras are still equipment and they require practice. They require doing this. They are not flawless. Just setting up a camera, putting it on autofocus and taking a picture doesn't mean you're gonna get perfect focus. There are a lot of times when I'm doing these YouTube videos and the freaking camera will focus on my hand rather than on my face, even though it's on current eye detection and my hand has no eyes on it. But there are a couple of things that you can double check to make sure that this isn't affecting you as well. One is your shutter speed. If you're noticing blurry motion or kind of a what's called a ghosting effect where you see someone's head and then there's kind of a movement of it, this is called ghosting. And this is when your shutter speed is not high enough. Any movement, even your hands shaking can cause what's called handshake or movement in the camera. So if your shutter speed is below 1/100th or 1/125th, double check that because you might be getting handshake or movement like wind or something like that. So shutter speed is the first thing to note. Make sure it's high enough to freeze that motion. And the next thing you can do is manual focus. Now this is a little tricky, but it is very, very good to know how to use. All you have to do is switch your lens into manual focus. And then when you're looking at an item, there should be a button on the back of your camera that allows you to zoom in when you're in live view. On a Canon, it is a little magnifying glass looking thing. And if you press it once, it'll digitally zoom in. If you press it twice, it'll digitally zoom in even farther, which gets you really close to what you're looking at. And then you can adjust the manual focus to exactly where you want it to make sure that it is really crisp and then take the picture. This locks in your focus really, really well. However, remember, if you move, that focus will change and you'll have to adjust the focusing. It's not like autofocus where it's constantly updating and changing and tracking. That is a more advanced way to get focus, but it is something to note and something you should practice because it makes your pictures super sharp if you learn how to do it and do it really well. All right, the next tip is probably the most helpful tip that I will give you today. You ready for it? It's the one you've been waiting for, and that is to like this video. Gotcha. No, but seriously, like if you could like the video, it does make a huge difference. And we're off to the next actual tip, which is anxiety. This is very, very common. And if I'm going to be frank, I constantly feel nervous before shoots. I'm worried about, will they like the photos? Will I mess up? Will I forget to do something? Will I get all my settings right? What if I miss getting this shot? What if I don't pose them right? There's so many what ifs. And I found that practice makes a huge difference. Constantly practicing using my camera, running test shoots, using people as examples, figuring out the things that I'm not used to or not necessarily good at, and practicing those things with friends or just practicing them in general, it does make a huge difference. Practice will give you way more confidence than any other method. Now, another one is if you're doing a specific shoot, let's say you're doing an engagement shoot and you're just not sure how to pose, or you're doing a portrait shoot in the studio or something like that and you're not sure how to pose, then just Google like engagement shoots or portrait shoots or cool poses for engagement shoots. Google these, go to the images tab and scroll through. Find ones you like, screenshot them, put them on your phone, because then when you're at the shoot and let's say you're rolling, you have all these photos that you're taking and then you're like, I have no more ideas. Well, then you can just pull out your phone, scroll, find the photos that you screenshot, be like, ooh, let's do this. And I found that when I do that, I start doing those photos, I start remembering or thinking of new cool things to try, and that seems to get the ball rolling again. The other thing is, remember that you are the photographer. If you exude confidence, even if you don't feel it inside, if you exude confidence and you just work with your models or the people you're shooting, a lot of times just rolling with it is great. Ask them, hey, what kind of stuff do you want to try? Hey, I want to try this. Do you guys want to see if this will work? Because a lot of times people are just there to have fun, and sometimes some of the most crazy ideas turn out to be the greatest photos. So just roll with it, have fun, and try not to stress out too much. But these little tips here will help you kind of get the ball rolling and lower that anxiety level. And finally, number 5, I have actually a couple of tips that I'm going to tell you at the end of this video, but number 5 is what programs should I edit with? I'm gonna keep this one super simple. I use Lightroom and Photoshop. I recommend Lightroom and Photoshop. You can get them from Adobe for $9.99 a month. It's super cheap, especially if you're actually wanting to go somewhere with this. It is a small investment that will literally carry you through the entire everything about photography in the editing world. Photoshop allows you to do pretty much everything. It's a beast of a program, but it does allow you to do whatever you want. It just takes some learning. Lightroom is super user friendly. You can pretty much do anything you want in Lightroom with regards to color edits. You can do somewhat spot touch-ups. I have tons of tutorials on Lightroom and Photoshop on my YouTube channel to help you get started from beginner to advanced editing techniques. But those are the two I use. Those are the two I recommend. There are other programs out there, but it's just what I use. And speaking of Lightroom, if you would like to get some awesome free presets and a Lightroom hotkey cheat sheet, I want to send them to you for free. I made 3 presets that are absolutely amazing and a Lightroom hotkey cheat sheet to help you speed up your edits. All you have to do is click the link in the description, fill out the form, and they'll be emailed directly to you. Okay, that was a lot of really, really good data for you and should hopefully get you going and get you started, answer those questions that you haven't had answered. I have a few tips for you, few tips that really should help. And these are tips that I have experienced myself. The first one is comparing yourself to others. This one I am famous for. When I first started, I would look on Instagram, I'd look online, and I'd see all these amazing photographs, and it would actually depress me because I'm looking at all these photos and I want to create them. But then I would try and recreate them. I would set up relatively the same scene and they wouldn't look anything like it. Well, I came to learn that my experience level and their experience level was about 2 to 15 years difference. I can't expect myself or anyone to take a photo like a 15-year veteran photographer at year or month 1. It's just not gonna happen. So I started comparing myself to myself. I would take a bunch of photos, and then a week later I would take more, and then a week later I'd take more, and I keep taking photos. And so what I would do was I would take photos from month 2 and compare them to month 1. Or take photos from week 4 and compare them to week 3. And I'd compare them to myself. And let me tell you, there is a huge difference. The editing, the photo capturing, pretty much all of this was a massive improvement. And that is a huge, huge confidence booster because you see your growth. It's all well and good to use others for inspiration or ideas, but never compare yourself or get upset because you're not creating what they're creating. They most likely have an entirely different skill level, and it's unfair to you to compare yourself to them. As you grow and learn, you'll see those changes, and that will boost your confidence. And finally, the last tip, and probably I would like to say the most important, but I think all of these are really, really important. They're all very class A tips, and this one is to practice. Photography is a doingness. It is not a research, learn. You will learn far more from practicing and doing than you will by asking questions. It's great to ask questions. It's great to watch videos and learn new techniques and to get new ideas. But learn a technique and then go practice it until you have it down so cold that you are dreaming about that technique. And then go ask questions or learn something new, but then go practice that until you have it down so cold you dream about it. And then go ask questions and learn. You get the idea. And there you have it. Those are the most commonly asked questions for beginners. A couple of tips that if you don't see them as gems now, when you get a little bit farther in your photography journey, you will see them as gems. Let me tell you, you'll look back and be like, aha, Will was right. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you haven't already, give it a like. If you have any other tips or questions or anything like that, go ahead and comment, ask questions. You know, this is how you learn, but then go practice it until you have it down cold. Also, don't forget to subscribe. I do videos like this every Monday at 7 p.m. I will link all the videos that I referenced in this video down in the description, as well as the link to these awesome, stylish, really comfy hoodies and how to get those free presets. Hope you guys had fun. I'll see you next time.